There's a saying passed down through the generations in many African villages: beware the heart of the mother-in-law, for it can turn as cold as the moonless night and strike with the fury of a scorned spirit. This tale, woven from whispers, fireside conversations, and warnings given in hushed tones, speaks of a time when the bond of marriage wasn't just between a man and a woman, but a delicate dance involving the entire family. And sometimes, the most dangerous foe was the one closest to home. In the heart of the Njimba village, where the earth was rich and fertile and the skies were vast and unending, lived a proud widow named Adaobi. She had once been a celebrated beauty, the jewel of her village, married to a great warrior who met his end defending the lands from invaders. His death had left her alone, with one thing to live for: her son, Ayodele. Ayodele was her world. She had raised him alone, pouring all her love and energy into molding him into a man who would honor the legacy of his late father. Adaobi's life revolved around him, her love for her son bordering on obsessive. He was her only joy in a world that had become dark and uncertain. As Ayodele grew older, his talents as a hunter and his strong build caught the attention of many families in the village. But Adaobi had no desire to see her son wed. She was convinced that no woman could ever be worthy of him, that no one would ever love him as much as she did. But fate is not so easily thwarted. And when Ayodele laid eyes on Kemi, a young woman of unparalleled beauty and kindness from a neighboring village, he fell deeply in love. Their connection was immediate, their love like the vibrant colors of a sunset, visible for all to see. Adaobi watched with an increasing sense of dread as Ayodele's attentions began to shift from her to Kemi. The wedding, a grand celebration, filled the village with joy. But not everyone smiled that day. Adaobi's heart seethed in silence as she watched her son pledge his life to another woman. And so, on the day that should have marked the beginning of a new chapter, Adaobi's bitterness began to brew a darkness that would soon unravel the peace of their young marriage. In the weeks following the wedding, the newlyweds settled into their lives. Ayodele and Kemi were inseparable, their laughter echoing through the village as they built a home together. Kemi was everything a wife should be: loving, caring, and dutiful. She respected her mother-in-law, going out of her way to help Adaobi, and was eager to win her affection. But no matter what Kemi did, it was never enough for Adaobi. From the very beginning, Adaobi began to find fault with Kemi. If Kemi cooked, Adaobi would complain that the food wasn't as flavorful as it should be. If Kemi cleaned, Adaobi would point out areas she missed, even if they were spotless. At first, Ayodele brushed it off as the natural friction between his mother and wife, chalking it up to the challenges of adjusting to a new family dynamic. But soon, Kemi began to notice things that troubled her deeply. Adaobi would stare at her with cold, unblinking eyes whenever Ayodele wasn't around, as though watching for some mistake. Kemi could feel her mother-in-law's disapproval clinging to her like a shadow, an invisible barrier that blocked any hope of warmth or acceptance. Despite all of Kemi's efforts, the relationship between the two women soured further with each passing day. Kemi's once vibrant smile began to fade, her days weighed down by Adaobi's constant criticisms. She confided in her closest friends, who sympathized with her but offered little hope. "It's the way of things," they would say. A mother never truly lets go of her son. Yet, even with the growing tension, Kemi never imagined that Adaobi's jealousy would turn dangerous. She couldn't fathom the depth of her mother-in-law's hatred or the lengths to which she would go to reclaim her son's affection. It was on a cold, moonless night when Adaobi finally reached her breaking point. As she lay awake in her hut, unable to sleep while thoughts of Kemi and Ayodele filled her mind, she made a decision. The world had taken too much from her, first her husband, and now her son. She would not allow a young woman to come between her and the only thing she had left. Adaobi made her way through the forest to the edge of the village, where a crooked old hut stood, hidden away from prying eyes. The hut belonged to Is, an infamous witch who lived on the fringes of society, feared and revered in equal measure. Isa's powers were well known, though few dared to seek her help. But Adeobi's heart was blinded by jealousy, and she was willing to do whatever it took to rid herself of Kemi. Adeobi is rust when she opened the door to her visitor. I knew you would come. The darkness in your heart led you here. I need your help, Adeobi said, her voice trembling with desperation. My son's wife, she's poisoning him against me. She's taken everything from me. I want her gone. Isa's eyes gleamed with understanding. You wish to curse her? To make her suffer? Yes, Adeobi whispered. Make her weak, make her marriage fail. I want my son back. He smiled wickedly and began to prepare a dark concoction, muttering incantations as she walked. After what seemed like hours, she handed Adeobi a small talisman, made from twisted roots and animal bones. Place this under their beds, the witch instructed. It would drain the life from her, weaken her spirit, and poison their love. But be warned, once the curse takes hold, there is no turning back. Adeobi didn't hesitate. She took the talisman and returned to the village, her heart cold with determination. That night, while Ayodele and Kemi slept, she crept into their home and slid the talisman beneath their bed. From that moment, the dark magic began its work. At first, the effects were subtle. Kemi began to feel a strange weariness settle over her, a tiredness that no amount of sleep could shake. She found herself becoming forgetful, misplacing things or forgetting simple tasks. Ayodele, too, began to change. He became more irritable, quick to anger over the smallest things. Their once harmonious home turned tense, filled with misunderstandings and unspoken grievances. As the weeks passed, the tension between Ayodele and Kemi grew worse. The love that had once bound them together was now strained, fraying at the edges. They fought more often, about things that didn't matter, small disagreements blown out of proportion by the unseen force working against them. And then the nightmares began. Every night, Kemi would dream of a dark figure standing at the foot of their bed, whispering words she couldn't understand. She would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding, only to find Adeobi watching her from the doorway, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Kemi's health deteriorated rapidly. She lost weight, her skin grew pale, and her once bright eyes became dull and lifeless. She was plagued by constant headaches and a feeling of dread that she couldn't shake. Ayodele grew distant, unable to understand why his once joyful wife had changed so drastically. But deep down, Kemi knew. She could feel the malevolence in her mother-in-law's gaze, the hatred that radiated from Adeobi like a curse. She tried to talk to Ayodele about it, but he refused to believe that his mother could be capable of such cruelty. His loyalty to Adeobi blinded him to the truth, leaving Kemi alone in her suffering. Kemi, now weak and fearful for her life, knew she had to seek help. She visited the village elder, a wise old woman named Neka, who had lived long enough to see the hidden evils that sometimes lurked in people's hearts. Neka listened to Kemi's tale, nodding gravely as the young woman recounted the strange events in her home, Adeobi's coldness, and her own declining health. There is dark magic at work here, Neka said, her voice low and serious. Your mother-in-law has placed a curse on you, a curse born from her jealousy and possessiveness. It is a powerful thing, but all curses can be undone if you are brave enough to face the truth. Kemi's heart pounded with fear, but she knew Neka was right. She could no longer remain silent. She had to confront Adeobi and reveal the evil she had wrought upon their family. The climactic confrontation, that evening, while Ayodele was away hunting, Kemi returned to her home with Neka by her side. Together, they uncovered the talisman hidden beneath the bed, its twisted roots riding with dark energy. Kemi felt a wave of revulsion as she looked at the cursed object that had drained the life from her marriage. They confronted Adeobi, who stood frozen in shock as Kemi held up the talisman. I know what you've done, Kemi said, her voice trembling with both fear and anger. You've poisoned our love, cursed me because you couldn't stand to share your son. Adeobi's face twisted with rage. You don't deserve him. He is mine, my son. You will never be enough for him, Kemi. Nneka stepped forward, her eyes blazing with authority. Your jealousy has blinded you, Adeobi. You have let darkness into your heart, and now it threatens to destroy everything you hold dear. If you do not break this curse, it will consume not only Kemi but your son as well. Adeobi faltered, her anger giving way to fear.